Hello, and thanks for stopping by. Today, I'm in Cambridge, about 50 miles north of London, a city long regarded as one of the world's great centres of learning. With a history stretching back over 800 years, Cambridge University has produced an astonishing 121 Nobel Prize winners, and been at the forefront of breakthroughs in everything from computing and DNA research to medicine, astronomy, physics, engineering, and more. The city has also nurtured many celebrated poets and authors, and through the Cambridge Footlight Society made a huge contribution to British comedy. On top of all that, Cambridge is, quite simply, one of the most beautiful cities in Britain. In this video, I'd like to take you on a tour around Cambridge and show you some of its history and quirkier sites, including its oldest structure, secret artworks, the site of the world's first video game, Sir Christopher Wren's very first project, a vicious looking postbox, historic pubs, and much, much more. So then, let's go and see what we can find. During its long history, Cambridge, which you may be surprised to hear didn't gain city status until 1951, has gone by several names. The first major settlement here, founded by the Romans in around AD 70, was known as Durolipont, which roughly translates as the fort by the bridge, and was centred around this area, just north of today's Magdalen Bridge. In 1068, the Normans arrived and built a castle upon this hill, now long lost of course, by which point the settlement had come to be known as Grant Bridge, Granta being the original name of the river which flows through the city. Over time, Grant Bridge evolved into Cambridge, and the river, accordingly, became known as the Cam, a rare instance of a river changing its name to match a town. The oldest surviving structure in Cambridge is this building, the Tower of St Benet's Church. Despite standing beside Corpus Christi College, the church predates the university by around 150 years. Its tower was built during the Anglo-Saxon period, making it around 1,000 years old. One quirky feature of St Benet's Tower are the round holes lined around the top. It's said these were created as places for owls to roost, their presence offering a handy method of pest control back in the days when the muddy streets below would have been teeming with vermin. Cambridge University was founded in 1209 by, believe it or not, a group of scholars from their great rivals, Oxford. In the early 13th century, Oxford University, whose roots stretch back to 1096, was shaken by a violent clash with the town's civic leaders, prompting many students to seek new sites elsewhere, leading one group to head towards Cambridge. Thanks to the presence of the all-powerful Ely Cathedral, which lies 14 miles north of Cambridge, and the work of the monks there, the area was already associated with academia, and as such, the religious authorities were keen to encourage the growth of a new university. Despite this, tensions, just as they had done in Oxford, came to simmer between students and the residents of Cambridge. A humorous nod to the antagonism between the so-called town and gown is the reality checkpoint, a tall Victorian lamppost which stands in the middle of the common known as Parker's Piece. Placed here in the 1890s, the reality checkpoint supposedly marks the boundary between the university and the, in inverted commas, real world. Well, that's one theory anyway. Others say that, if you've been drinking, the reality checkpoint is in fact a reminder that you should try and act sober, as Parkside Police Station stands opposite the common. Cambridge Fire Station is located here too, outside of which you can see this small memorial honouring the 343 New York City firefighters who died on 9/11. Parker's Piece is also notable for its sporting heritage. You see, in the 19th century, an early form of football was often played here by students, leading to the creation of the Cambridge rules, which introduced features such as throw-ins, the offside rule, and a ban on running with the ball in hand. As such, Parker's Piece is, arguably, the birthplace of the modern game, and the importance of this ground is now marked by a monument in the northwest corner of the park, listing the university's 1848 rules in various languages. If you peer closely below the reality checkpoint, you'll see this little sculpture of a door. This is one of Cambridge's many Dinky doors, miniature artworks which since 2019 have been created and installed at various points around the city by a mysterious unknown couple. Other examples include the Wonder Emporium on Sussex Street, 10 1/4 Downing Street on Downing Street. Yep, just like London, Cambridge also has a Downing Street. The DFO, Dinky Flying Object, which has supposedly crashed outside the Cambridge Museum of Technology. Major's Pages, outside Cambridge University Press Bookshop, an institution which can trace its history back to 1581. The Octo Spa, an octopus health resort on Sedgwick Street. And the Emailerator on the corner of Riverside Road and Priory Road. The Emailerator stands beside a full-sized postbox, which happens to be one of the most unusual postboxes in the UK. Firstly, because it's anonymous. In other words, unlike other British postboxes, it's blank and doesn't bear a royal cipher. And secondly, because it's topped with a vicious collection of spikes. You see, this postbox once stood at another site, outside the gasworks on the eastern side of Cambridge, and it's said the spikes were added to prevent would-be trespassers from clambering over the gasworks wall. Another eccentric feature of Cambridge is the Corpus clock, also known as the Grasshopper clock, a striking public artwork on the corner of Bennett Street and King's Parade, whose design symbolises time being relentlessly devoured. The fearsome-looking grasshopper perched atop the clock represents the grasshopper escapement mechanism, a device that releases energy gently to keep time accurately. The grasshopper escapement was invented in the 1700s by John Harrison, the man whose marine chronometers finally made accurate sea navigation possible. This curious timepiece was unveiled in 2008 by one of the most brilliant minds ever associated with Cambridge, the theoretical physicist Professor Stephen Hawking, who was a fellow of Gonville and Caius College for over 50 years. When Professor Hawking passed away in 2019, his funeral was held close to here at Great St Mary's Church. If you don't mind climbing a very narrow staircase, you can head to the top of Great St Mary's Tower for some wonderful views of the city. Great St Mary's can trace its history back to 1205, and was the university's first official meeting place. As such, many graduation ceremonies were held here over the centuries, although today they're now held opposite in Senate House. In 1793, a sequence of chimes was composed for the bells of Great St Mary's. These became known as the Cambridge Quarters. Here, have a listen. Do they sound familiar? Chances are they do. That's because when London's Big Ben bell began ringing in 1859, it adopted the same sequence. So, next time you hear those iconic chimes, remember, Great St Mary's came first. Cambridge University is made up of 31 colleges, the oldest of which is Peterhouse, an establishment named after St Peter, which was founded in 1284 by the then Bishop of Ely, Hugh de Balsham. Famous alumni of Peterhouse include the jet engine pioneer Sir Frank Whittle and mathematician Charles Babbage, whose concept for an analytical engine in the 1830s earned him the nickname the father of modern computing. Cambridge has many other links with the history of computing. Alan Turing studied at King's College, for example. He graduated with a first in mathematics in 1934. And between 1949 and 1958, the university's former mathematical laboratory, which was sited here, on what's now called the New Museum site, was home to a machine known as EDSAC, the Electronic Delay Storage Automatic Calculator. Whilst that name may sound a little stuffy, the EDSAC had quite a claim to fame, for it was arguably the first machine in the world to run what we'd now call a video game. The game in question was OXO, a simple game of noughts and crosses, pitted against a machine's artificial intelligence, with the human player entering their choices via a telephone rotary dial. Very different, of course, to the game controllers you see today. This shop, meanwhile, number 6 King's Parade, now an ice cream parlour, was once home to Sinclair Research, the company founded by Chris Curry and Sir Clive Sinclair, which in the 1980s helped pioneer home computer use in Britain with their ZX Spectrum machine, a computer which sold over 5 million units during its time. Due to their conflicting views though, Chris Curry split from Sinclair and went on to found the rival Acorn Computers.
Acorn Electron can be found at local Acorn dealers and major high street stores. Just call.
Naturally, this caused quite a bit of bad blood. So much so that one night in Christmas 1984, the two entrepreneurs famously ended up in a physical brawl at Cambridge's Baron of Beef pub, a fight that was depicted in the 2009 BBC drama Micromen. Unsurprisingly, Cambridge is dotted with many plaques celebrating the city's historic achievements and links to notable figures. The most profound of these is this plaque, attached to Victoria House, an NHS facility in Fulbourn on the city's southeastern outskirts. As the plaque states, this is dedicated to George Brewster. George was an 11-year-old chimney sweep who, in March 1875, was sent up by his master, William Wire, to scrub the inside of one of this building's narrow chimneys, back when it was Fulbourn Asylum. Tragically, like so many children before him, George became stuck in the cramped flue, and ended up choking to death on soot. Upon reading a report of George's death, the great Victorian philanthropist, Anthony Ashley Cooper, the 7th Earl of Shaftesbury, vowed to renew his push for a change in the law, something he'd already been pursuing for 35 years. Young George's death proved to be the tipping point, and in 1880, an act prohibiting such child labour practices was finally passed. As such, George Brewster was the last young chimney sweep to die at work in Britain, and it's believed he's the youngest person in the UK to have such a plaque dedicated in his honour. Another deeply moving site on the city's outskirts is the Cambridge American Cemetery, located on a peaceful slope near Madingley. The cemetery was dedicated on the 16th of July 1956, the land having been donated by Cambridge University, and holds the remains of almost 4,000 US servicemen killed in the Second World War, along with a wall listing a further 5,000 names of those whose bodies were never recovered. It is also here that you'll find a memorial bench dedicated to Major Glenn Miller, the famous American big band leader who disappeared in December 1944 during a flight over the English Channel. Part of the cemetery includes this chapel, inside of which you can see this incredible ceiling mosaic depicting angels alongside American warplanes. And on the outside, a huge map depicting the locations of all the American bases located in Britain during the war. Back in central Cambridge, there are many bridges spanning the River Cam, each of which has its own distinctive design. The most unusual being the Mathematical Bridge, which crosses the river behind Queen's College. The Mathematical Bridge was first built in 1749, and although the current incarnation dates from 1905, the design remains exactly the same. As you can see, it's a very clever piece of engineering, for although it achieves a graceful curve, every single component used to create it is completely straight. One of English history's most controversial figures, Oliver Cromwell, hailed from these parts. He was born at this spot in Huntingdon in 1599, and later lived in Ely, where he can now visit his former home. He also studied at Sidney Sussex College and represented Cambridge as a Member of Parliament. It was thanks to Cromwell, of course, that King Charles I ended up being beheaded, an event which many later came to regret. As such, following Cromwell's death in 1658, and the subsequent restoration of the monarchy, a decision was made to dig up Cromwell's corpse and symbolically hang it at London's dreaded Tyburn Gallows. Once this was done, Cromwell's rotting body was beheaded. His bonds was then shoved on a spike and displayed outside Westminster Hall in London, where it remained for some 20 years. Nice. Over the following centuries, Cromwell's head passed through the hands of various collectors and museums, until finally, on the 25th of March 1960, it was quietly buried at a secret spot within the grounds of Sidney Sussex College, Cromwell's former alma mater. Due to a period when the head's whereabouts were unaccounted for though, there is still some debate as to whether or not this really was Cromwell's head. Which begs the question, if it wasn't his, then whose was it? Cambridge is blessed with many lovely pubs, so many in fact that you could dedicate an entire video to them. For now though, we'll take a look at the oldest two. The oldest licensed pub in Cambridge is the Pickerel Inn, a pickerel being a young pike, which opened on Magdalen Street way back in 1608. Naturally, it's said this old pub is haunted, in this case by the ghost of a woman who drowned in a nearby River Cam, and when the author, C.S. Lewis, best known for his Chronicles of Narnia series, held an academic position at neighbouring Magdalen College in the 1950s and early 60s, you could often find him drinking in the Pickerel. Cambridge's second oldest pub is the Eagle, which opened in 1667, and was originally a galleried coaching inn. You can still see the large entrance where stagecoaches would have rumbled through. The Eagle is rightfully celebrated for its RAF bar. During the Second World War, many airmen from both the Royal Air Force and the United States 8th Air Force were stationed near Cambridge, and this pub proved especially popular with them. The airmen who drank here quickly established a tradition of scrawling their names upon the ceiling, usually using either lipstick or candle lighters. This historic swathe of graffiti was later covered over, and remained so until the 1990s. Thankfully, the ceiling is now fully restored, and visiting aircrews are encouraged to continue the tradition. It was also at the Eagle, at lunchtime on the 28th of February 1953, that the scientist Francis Crick excitedly burst in and announced, rather boldly, that he and James Watson had just discovered the secret of life: the double helix DNA structure. Today, this groundbreaking event is marked by a plaque outside the pub, which also honours the important work of Rosalind Franklin, whose pioneering X-ray techniques at King's College London produced the remarkably sharp photograph 51, the image that helped reveal the structure of DNA in 1952. Crick and Watson's work on the DNA helix was conducted very close to the Eagle at the original Cavendish Laboratory on Old School Lane, the same place where, amongst many other things, the electron and neutron were also discovered. Another nod to Cambridge's links with the DNA discovery is this golden helix artwork, which you can see outside Francis Crick's former residence on Portugal Place. And whilst we're on the subject of notable addresses in Cambridge, it's also worth pointing out this home on Glisson Road, for this is where the musician Syd Barrett, one of the founding members of Pink Floyd, grew up. Founded by Marie St Pol in 1347, Pembroke is Cambridge University's third oldest college, and is especially notable for its chapel, for this was the first ever building designed by the great architect Sir Christopher Wren. Pembroke's chapel was consecrated in 1665, just 1 year before the Great Fire of London erupted, in the wake of which Wren would rebuild many more churches, including of course St Paul's Cathedral. Out of all of Cambridge's colleges, King's is easily the most prominent, an exquisite example of Gothic architecture which dominates both King's Parade and the picturesque area known as the Backs. King's was founded by King Henry VI in 1441, although the project was stalled by the War of the Roses. You can see evidence of this delay in the college's stonework. There's a clear physical difference between the older lower section and the rest of the building, which was completed many years later. Inside, King's is noted for its breathtaking fan vault ceiling, the largest such example in the world. Today, King's is also famous for its annual and very atmospheric carol service, officially known as the 9 Lessons and Carols, which is held every Christmas Eve. In their current form, the carols from King's date from 1918, having been introduced by the Dean, Eric Milner White, a former army chaplain who believed such a comforting service was vital in the immediate aftermath of the Great War. Carols from King's have been broadcast on BBC Radio since 1928, and on television since 1954. We'll end our tour at Trinity College, which, being the largest, is considered to be the university's most powerful institution, something that's probably also helped by the fact that it was founded by King Henry VIII in 1546. You can see a statue of Henry VIII holding pride of place above Trinity's Great Gate. In his right hand, you'll notice he's holding a wooden staff, which is in fact an old chair leg. This was placed there many years ago as a student's prank, and has remained there ever since. For a brief period though, in 2023, Henry was presented with a new gilded sceptre to mark King Charles III's 75th birthday. You can now see this fancy rod on display just inside the main gate. King Charles III himself attended Trinity. He studied archaeology, anthropology and history, and one of the college's most celebrated alumni is Sir Isaac Newton, which is why you can see this apple tree just outside the entrance. This tree was grafted from the one located at the Newton's family home, Woolsthorpe Manor in Lincolnshire. The very tree, of course, whose falling apple is said to have sparked Isaac Newton's theory of gravity. Between 1805 and 1808, the great poet Lord Byron also studied at Trinity, where he spent most of his time indulging in his passions, namely boxing, horse riding, gambling, and of course romance. Lord Byron also happened to be a great lover of dogs, and was rather dismayed therefore when he discovered the college forbade keeping them on site as pets. Byron could find nothing in the rules about keeping other animals though, and so decided to purchase a bear instead, which slept in his dorm and could often be seen walking around the campus with him. Naturally, there's a pub in Cambridge named in the bear's honour. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tour of Cambridge, and as always, I'd love to hear your own thoughts. Is it a city you visited yourself? Or perhaps you're lucky enough to live here, or indeed study here? If so, please do share your experiences in the comments below. If you haven't yet subscribed to Rob's London, then I'd appreciate it very much if you could please consider doing so, as this, along with clicking the bell icon to receive notifications, will ensure that you don't miss out whenever I publish a new video. Plus of course, it'd be wonderful to have you along. If you're feeling extra generous, you can also support my work with a tip via either my Ko-fi account, which I'll link below, or the YouTube thanks button, which appears as a heart icon beneath the video. Any such financial donations are of course greatly appreciated, and they really do help go towards creating content. Anyway, on that note, thanks again for watching friends. Stay well, and please be sure to stay tuned.